Hello, everyone, and welcome back to another audio video. My name is Nate, and welcome to my Empire Years Odin review. So, while I call it a review, I would approach this more like my point of view, an audiophile journey, so to speak. These are by no means a cheap earphone, so I would always encourage everyone, if you are seriously still considering this, to try and demo this if you can. Because I live in Canada, there aren't as many IEM stores for me to try it, so I would never be able to find something like this off of, let's say, a Best Buy and try it out. So I'm relatively new when it comes to the audiophile journey. I've demoed, I would say, around 6 or 7 top of the line flagship products so far, and out of the ones that I've used, this really stood out to me. So let's first start out with the aesthetics. This is a beautiful looking IEM, and this honestly is one of a kind, quite figuratively and literally, because the base plates are one of a kind. And when this popped up in the used market in one of the Canadian sites, I had to arrange a meet to demo this in person. So long story short, after the third song of Vivaldi Four Seasons, I made eye contact with the gentleman that was the previous owner of this, and I thought to myself, hey, how much am I willing to pay for this earphone? Because this is a tremendous sounding earphone. It sounds like completely different class to another IEM that I owned at the time called the Monarch Mark II. And what I like about this earphone is just the amount of clarity and quality, clean sound that I'm getting off of these. Also, the bass it was quite visceral, and the W9 weapon driver dynamic bass that this thing is packing, it really hits you in a way that other earphones seldomly do. But let's jump into a couple of categories here and talk more about the specifications. This is a 11 driver configuration with 2 dynamic drivers, 5 BAs, and 4 ESTs. And I was quite surprised at how much technology was able to pack into such a small chassis. So I've heard on forums that this is like a relatively a big earphone, so I had a bit of a fear that this might not fit my ear properly. To give you an idea, I have bought the Z1R before, and I had to return it because it couldn't stay in my ear longer than 30 minutes. I've also owned the Monarch Mark II long term, and after 2 hours, I could really start to feel some soreness for my ears. So I have relatively small ears, so size is a big factor for me when discovering IEMs. I seldomly have that problem with open ear headphones because besides the comfort hitting my head, size is never a problem for me on that front. So I was a bit more picky when picking this up, but there's a few good reasons why I ended up buying this earphone. First of all, the fit, it works on me. To give you an idea, the Oriolus Traillii is almost a perfect fit for my ears, and it gives me the same type of fit that the U12T does. This is a little bit bigger, so it does feel a tiny bit snug, but after about an hour, that feeling goes away. Another reason is the cable. The cable is really light. I know other YouTubers have touched on this, but I need to stress the importance of how comfortable the cable is. So you have headphones and speakers, which some can even argue sound better than earphones. Because there's such a limited form factor here, you're not able to get the tremendous amount of soundstage or bass quantity as on the IEMs compared to, let's say, open ear headphones. So bass is another important aspect for me that it had to be there, and the bass certainly is there. Now let's break down each of the different components when it comes to the sound, and I'll use the Monarch Mark II as an example. Comparing bass with the Odins to the Monarch Mark II, I would give it a few extra points on the Empire Years Odin, both in terms of quantity and quality. What do I mean by quality? When you hear, for example, the cello zipping through your ear, you get, figuratively, you get lines of information passing through your ear. On the Monarch Mark II, if I had to put a number on it, I would get anywhere between 3 to 5 lines of information passing through my ear. With the Odin, sometimes I'm able to get 5 to 7. So I'm able to hear detail that I've never heard on certain tracks before. Uh, and it's not just marketing. The W9 weapon drivers are just phenomenal on that front. The mids is kind of where things can trade depending on your preferences. I would say they're pretty similar, and that's one of the strengths of the Monarch Mark II is how good vocal music sounds with that piece. With treble, that's where again it gets a little bit dicey because the tuning of the Monarch Mark II makes the treble-oriented music more of an all-rounder for genres such as metal and hip-hop. And that is one of the reasons why most people, I would feel, would prefer the Monarch Mark II over the Empire Years Odin, regardless of price, simply because of how versatile it sounds. However, what takes the edge for the Empire Years Odin for me is how much more dynamics that it has. And using Kiss the Rain, for example, there's a point in that song where there's three swings of a violin, and I'm able to catch a lot more distance between that point compared to the Monarch Mark II, which seemed flat. So if you want a safer IEM for all genres, I would go with the Monarch Mark II. And if you want music that is fit for the type of tuning that this piece has, I would definitely give the Odins a try. When it comes to color temperature, using the Traillii as an example, I would put the Traillii as a warmer sounding IEM, a richer, more analog sounding, whereas the Odin's has more of a detailed, clear, analytical listen. Now, sometimes people make that a negative when it, to my ears, it isn't. For genres like classical music, I do prefer the Odin's over the Traillii, simply because when there's 10 instruments in the background, and let's say a flute is playing in the background, you're in a normal conventional type of earphone, you can barely hear it, where the upper mid boost of these earphones pushes those more to the forefront, where you can hear all the different planes of the instruments playing at once. And it's the same case with orchestra music and with movie soundtracks, which is essentially classical music. And also even for some vocal music, it gives that pristine, ethereal, airy type of sound. And I also do like the sound for electronic music as well, such as vocal trance. It presents so much more information than I was able to hear before. And actually, when it comes to testing my earphones, I tend to use electronic music a lot because the differences become a lot more exaggerated. When I was hearing the Empire Years Odin on, again, I'll talk about the same song, Armin van Buuren's Mirage, I was really able to tell between the different layers that the song is playing at once, and that the song is such an excellent song to make me feel like I'm ascending and just give me that energy boost when I need it. Other genres like pop, I do like with this as well, minus some tracks that are treble heavy. An example is Heize Diary. So Korean music has a different aspect added into a lot of the different tracks, and the word to describe that is han. And what that means in English, roughly speaking, is the appreciation for the sadness, melancholy aspects of life, and it's an examination of that. Now, that song has that component in it as well, and to some listeners, it might sound like a cheerful song, but it's got a really deep meaning behind it, and it sounded exceptional, almost hypnotic while listening to this. Another genre, going back to more classical type of music, I loved hearing the Empire Years Odin off of Phantom of the Opera, specifically the song Past the Point of No Return. That movie is about redemption, and it's about a love triangle between a female character and two male characters. And in the song Past the Point of No Return, it's almost a crescendo, a climax of that movie where the main female lead character, Christine Daae, has to make a decision. She's at a crossroads of who she wants to choose. And during that scene, there's a revelation made, a discovery. and that causes cacophony of noises to play, as well as their voices like interweaving in and out of each other. This separates those different aspects, and I was able to hear not only a lot more, but it sounded more vivid, and the trumpets sounded euphoric off of these. So for tracks like that, big band instruments, orchestras, classical music, even some vocal music, I would highly recommend the Empire Years Odin, which has a contrast between there's a contrast between the tuning of the Empire Years Odin and how it looks. It looks avant-garde. It looks like it would be great for hip-hop music, but the tuning is different. For genres that have a lot of hot cymbals, such as metal and some electronic music like EDM, I would recommend an earphone more like the Mess 2, where the low end, mid, and also the treble is more evenly distributed. So hopefully you guys got some takeaway information from this piece, and what I'm saying right now is by no means a definitive rule on how to hear this earphone. There is a way to make this earphone more of an all-rounder, using different sources and matching it. And also I was able to hear the genres I talked about that didn't work for these, depending on the track and how it was recorded. Going back to orchestras, the reason why it sounds good on it is because the microphone that recorded the song is usually further out. So when the upper mid-range, specifically in the 2 to 5K range, is boosted, it plays to the strengths of this. Whereas with more aggressive modern type of music like metal, normally off of, let's say, the Traillii, it sounds like the cymbal is hitting from this point. Whereas with the Odins, it becomes closer. So if the track was recorded with more energy in the treble, sometimes it can get fatiguing quite fast. So hopefully you enjoyed this video. I'll be doing a full long-term review of the Oriolus Traillii, so subscribe to the channel if you want more videos like this. Take care, everyone.